I've had a lot of conversation with different teams, and there's different perspectives, and it just ranges. Some people are open-minded to new things, to new ideas, and some people they're a little less open-minded. And a lot of that skepticism, I think, comes from bad experiences or just they don't want to reinvent the wheel, which is understandable, right? If it's something that doesn't need to be fixed, why fix it? But there are a lot of things that we can improve on, right? One of the things I always ask teams right off the bat is who in the group is hired to be a tagline holder, right? And when it comes to our tech, who is hired to be a tagline holder? And everybody looks at me like, well, nobody has a title tagline holder. That's just a convenience thing that we are inconveniently having to necessarily do, right? And that gets people thinking, okay, this is a way for that for teams to get to the things that we really need the skills in, right? We don't need people to be skilled tagline holders. We need people to be skilled in not grabbing onto a tagline at the wrong time, right? But we don't need them to be skilled in that as a trade. So we need to repurpose that. We need to rethink how we do that.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Ground, a construction innovation podcast. I'm your host, Dagan Davis, and we have with us today our guest, Caleb Rosenberger. He's an executive global account manager for Vita Inclinata Technologies. Caleb, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're excited to get started with this one. One thing I would love to hear from you right off the bat, if no one's ever heard of you, what's your best explanation of what you guys do?
Absolutely. So our company, we have presence in the aerospace industry and the industrial industry, and we design below the hook rotational control devices.
Okay, great. So we are lifting.
We are lifting.
Awesome.
That's correct.
All right. So as far as in construction or the heavy lift industries, what do you see that is becoming dramatically more efficient right now?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to lifting, we're looking at a lot of technology, but we're also looking at how to streamline our communication as well. And a lot of that also has to do with, I think, the educational side and our efficiency. So whether it be implementing something new, like a piece of technology like ours, or whether it be working with teams on how to communicate better and just how to fine tune how we go about our processes, those are the things I think that are the most efficient and innovative right now.
Okay. Um, what's a specific improvement that people outside of the industry just would not, notice below the hook?
Below the hook, well, being able to control something that we've never been able to control before. When we look at rotational control, we're traditionally only using rope or we're using some type of a tagline to attach to that load. So now we can use, new technology, in our case, propulsion, to be able to control that.
Okay, great. So this really innovates on being able to place a load exactly where you want it, especially on the rotational side.
That's correct. Yep, we can get down to a degree of accuracy rotationally. So if you picture 360 degrees and you orientate yourself looking down like you're hanging on the hook, you picture that 360 degrees. We can get you exactly down to that degree heading and hold that, within that accuracy in multiple different types of environmental conditions. For example, high winds.
Okay. And so where are you seeing the most? I know you just gave an example there, but where are you seeing the most or the biggest use case of your actual product?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, heard me mention high winds. So we can usually bridge the gap between what you're cut off below the crane, all the way up to whatever that manufacturer that crane sets their equipment cutoffs at, because that's a structural issue, right? Um, a lot of times you're not comfortable using a tagline in a certain wind speed, but we can bridge that gap depending on what it is. It's all based on the characteristics of the load. So definitely in windy conditions, that's one of the highlights. I'd say the other part of it's precision and repetitive picks. So we have memory functions, which can speed up those repetitive picks, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes per pick, depending on the, nature of that pick. And then the other thing with that is being able to get down to that degree, and then we have multiple speed controls. So being able to fine tune that, if you're going into any tight conditions, places where you only have maybe an inch or two to work between the load and where you're placing the load, those types of scenarios, we can speed up that process where normally you'd be sitting there just trying to use one or more personnel to try to fit it right into that hole. It's almost like a puzzle piece, right? We're doing that with technology instead of you trying to do it manually.
Okay. So instead of using the trolley and everything to kinda keep everything in place, your technology is really keeping, um, or remembering that and having that memory for those continuous picks?
Well, that's one thing that we want to be clear about. We don't replace what the crane controls, right? But everything the crane hasn't been able to control, that's what we're trying to control. So the trolley mechanism, for example, we're dealing with a drifting, right, with that trolley. If it's not a tower crane, for example, you're doing that with boom drift or swing drift. You're still going to control those things with the crane operation. But with our technology, we're just controlling that rotational aspect that only taglines have been able to control before. So, um, we're adding in a level of control that you've actually really never had. So traditionally, when you're placing a load without our system, you might have two, four, six people just trying to manhandle that load once it gets close to its positioning, right? Or with taglines up to 250, 300 feet away, depending on what type of application you're using it for. So we're not replacing the crane control, but we are replacing what you've always tried to use your bodies to control.
Is there a stabilization mechanism to it?
So the system in itself does stabilize it rotationally. Any type of sway movements, like let's take Wolfcron for example. They have a anti-sway technology that they have on a number of their tower cranes, right? That isn't something that our system does in that regard, but we do control the rotational side. That's really the key. It's that simple. It's just the rotational aspect of it. But when you combine the two technologies, for example, or you can combine some really experienced control operation of that crane, someone who really knows what they're doing. I've seen firsthand on job sites that it reduces what I like to nickname the death circle, right? And traditionally when you're learning how to run a crane, you're trying to prevent that death circle, and you have to either do that by first controlling your swing drift or your boom drift when you're out of control, and the more control you have, the better you become. I think that controlling the rotation of the load with the VLN, for example, it really does um, prevent those as well. It helps prevent those motions.
Okay, great. And then what is the weight on your mechanism? How much weight are you adding to, your under the hook weight?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about our technology is it can be utilized in multiple configurations. Our go-to-market, we usually put it out and market it as a combination of what we call our fan tubes and our e-box onto a beam. In this case, Codwell is our main beam that we market, and it's a modular Duramod beam that they have that they produce. It's very lightweight. So when we look at our standard sizes, we go from a 7 foot shackle to shackle spread up to a 20-foot shackle to shackle spread. We found that those are the most marketable and usually what the client needs the most out of everything that we build. And so the weight range of that is anywhere from 1,600 pounds all the way up to 2,500 pounds. It's actually pretty lightweight, and that's
Yeah, that
at a
is.
capacity of about 40 metric tons, so 88,000 pounds. Now, it's important to note, though, that we can take off the beam. And for example, we can actually place it on like 70-meter bridges. We're working on a project right now coming up here where we're actually placing two units together. And what we'll do is we'll put the fan tubes mounted on top of the E box, which is that white box. And it's a different configuration. And then we'll let them communicate with each other and we'll just do a quick attachment to the load itself. The way our system works is it's a combination of torque and leverage. And when you put the two together, that's what gives you the power to be able to control that load. So even at that 7 meter spread and we combine those systems, we have that control, even though it's a much larger load than like 40 metric tons. So the weight of the e-box and the fan tubes, to answer your weight question there, we're looking at about roughly, I'd say, 6 to 800 pounds of weight there per unit, and then you can combine 2, 4, 6 units onto that load too. So that's kind of your range. It could be anywhere from 600, I'd say, up to 2,500, depending on your configuration.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And I used to work in tower cranes, and so we would rent out cranes to framers, for example, and I know exactly what you're talking about because you see the guys on top of the roofs trying to rotate the material, bundles of wood, lumber, things like that. And it can get quite dangerous very fast, especially with wind and elements of weather coming in. So I can see this being a huge advantage to the job site, especially on the safety side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we've all seen, those of us that have been in the field, how quickly those weather conditions can change, right? And when you're when you're there and you have a large um, load that the energy at play easily can overcome you. We've seen the videos on YouTube. We've seen the content where people their taglines can wrap around their wrists, their ankles. Even if you're doing everything you're trained to do, a lot of times you can get caught off guard and it grabs you. So I think being able to step away from it physically and let something else try to power through that scenario is the best way to handle it. And worst case, you're never going to go and chase a tagline when it's spinning out of control. That's the thing. So, worst case, um, that's where you're going to be back at anyways. So let's just let that load settle down and then we can get to it once it settles down.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, uh, you know, right there, you're just saving time with your product. So that's great. So yeah, just a little more information about your product there to start out. Just kind of learn more about that. Now I want to learn more about you and your career path and what got you to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started out in the industry about a little over a decade ago. I actually started out in oil and gas energy. I worked for a company called Halliburton when I first started, and that's where I kind of had my first exposure to cranes. Just simply building frac sites and working with cranes there. Um, I was able to when I left the oil fields, I start working for a subcontractor for a crane company called RMS Cranes, and eventually was offered a full time position with RMS Cranes as a driver or rigger, and that's where I really got exposure to building every type of crane there was. We had our tower crane division, our wind and renewable energy division, our taxi crane division, and I wanted to get experience in all of it. So I would take a semi truck and chase whatever crane they needed me to chase, and from there I was inspired to get more training, and I went into the local 9 out of Denver, IUOE, and had the opportunity to get my crane certifications and I operated cranes, and then eventually I moved over to Mammut. I was working in their wind and renewable energy in Texas, and I was able to mostly tailing cranes. I got to was learning how to operate their LR 1300 and Manitowoc 13,000, um, and then at that time, I had the opportunities presented to me to step into the operational management of another company. I had started to really network myself out there, get involved in LinkedIn and socially, see what other options were out there. And I was offered an opportunity to come and run logistics and operations for a company called ML Crane Group regionally for their wind and renewable energy division. Um, and during that time, I also had an offer from Vita, my current employer, to be an advisor for them. They um, started out in the aerospace side. We moved to the industrial side. And in the industrial side, it's a different market, of course, and they wanted to bring more awareness and expertise in to guide them as they went to market with this new product. And I was offered about a year after that, I was offered an opportunity to work full time. I've been with Vita going on 4.5 years now. And I did at the time, I started out as a product training and working directly with the sales team. My focus was to develop the educational training side of our product because what we found is even though it's a simple product, when you really look at how it works and how it functions, we're working with teams and riggers and operators that have, a lot of times they have 15, 20, 30 years of experience, and um, it can be intimidating to see something very, new, and even though
New.
it's innovative,
Yep.
yeah, it's different. You've never been able to do it. A lot of times when I go to a site and I'm training a team, for example, or one of my colleagues is training a team, what we find is that we're really just trying to make everybody comfortable, get to know them, and let them know, hey, you don't need to be intimidated by the product. And then from there, we're going back to the basics of their training, right? We're saying, hey, remember when we talked about those sling angles? Remember when we talked about those rigging things that you may have never been able to really worry about because you've always been doing it this way? Well, let's get creative with that. Let's see how we can rig differently. Let's see how we can implement this in there, because we are a lot of times adding, for example, a spreader beam in a scenario where we may never have had a spreader beam, because with our technology, you need at least what I call two hands on the load, right? And if you only have one, it's just one point for the load to spin around on, and that's what a hook is, right? But with two, down to our system and then down to the load, we have to look at our inward angles or outward angles and things like that. So we're really just getting back to what we've always done and what we already know. And then from there, we're guiding teams to be able to think outside the box, right? So yeah, when I came on with Vita, that was our primary thing, is how do we connect with clients and really get them to buy in and to expand their thinking on how to use not only our tech, but how to, get more creative with how they already rig loads. And that's one of the most exciting parts of my job. And then that expanded into what I do today. I'm a part of our sales team, and I bridge that gap, between our operations team, our engineering team, um, because I come from different backgrounds, different technical level backgrounds. I come from operations. I'm in touch with our industry, being that I worked in it. I have a lot of those relationships, and then of course I want to bring that out to new clients, and I want them to buy in and utilize our product and make things better for them.
Yeah, that's great to listen to that and just understand that your pathway, and that's very common in this industry too. People start as operators or part of the operation, and then they move up into, like, let's say, a sales role or an executive role, to end up pushing new things like a new product or something like that into the industry. And so that's really what we're trying to do here with this podcast. Is It's called Breaking Ground, because we're trying to break the ground of the old ways. And yes, there's a lot of great old ways, but the innovation comes very slow in this industry, and we want to start to try to ramp that up, or at least start the conversation at the very least. And so that's great what you're doing. I've been there too with some products where, the even services too, product services, where you have that old school mentality where they don't want to bring on something new, or they're not, like you said, maybe they're intimidated by it. So it's more of the teaching and the educational side of it first, like a chat like this one, and then it kind of unfolds into something much more. So that's great to hear. We're gonna step aside really quick and hear from High Level Talent, my company. Quick commercial break, and then we will be right back.
Every job site comes with pressure. Deadlines stacking, crews moving, jobs depending on you. But behind the scenes, everything slows down. Quotes and bids, calls, service tickets, even admin work stacks up. With high-level talent, you can hire remote staff to fill the traditional office positions at half the cost, so your team can focus on what actually makes money. Scale your operation without scaling your overhead. High-level talent. Visit highleveltalent.com today to learn more.
All right, and we're back to Breaking Ground, a construction innovation podcast, and we have Caleb Rosenberger with us here. And so, Caleb, we were just talking about before the commercial break, something that is interesting, and you and I kind of pointed out, hey, let's go back to that, because it is very important. This whole podcast is to have someone on like you, who's trying to push something innovative, and is trying to educate the industry on something new, something that can be make a job site even as simple as safer. And so, what are there any other things that you would like to bring up based on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've had a lot of conversation with different teams, and there's different perspectives, and it just ranges. Some people are open-minded to new things, to new ideas, and some people they're a little less open-minded. And a lot of that skepticism, I think, comes from bad experiences, or just they don't want to reinvent the wheel, which is understandable, right? If it's something that doesn't need to be fixed, why fix it? But there are a lot of things that we can improve on, right? And so one of the things I always ask teams right off the bat is, um, who in the group is hired to be a tagline holder, right? And when it comes to our tech, who is hired to be a tagline holder? And everybody looks at me like, well, nobody has a title tagline holder. That's just a convenience thing that we are inconveniently having to necessarily do, right? And that gets people thinking, okay, this technology, for example, is a way for teams to get to the things that we really need the skills in, right? We don't need people to be skilled tagline holders. We need people to be skilled in not grabbing onto a tagline at the wrong time, right? But we don't need them to be skilled in necessarily in that as a trade. So we need to repurpose that. We need to rethink how we do that. And I think there's a lot of other technology. I think there's maybe even some methods about how we go about our work that we can apply that type of thinking to. And sometimes it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just looking at even history and saying, well, was there a better way at some point too that maybe we can expand on, or maybe we can get back to? Sometimes we forget things over the years, or maybe we've never tried it before, but maybe this is a really good idea. And I think that one thing I see in a lot of the processes of general contractors, subcontractors, when they go through their pre-con phases and their reevaluation of that at the end of the project is they like, we do take pride in the organizational side. We want to be able to make things efficient in how we go about the process. But the thing that we don't always do is leave room for that creativity or trying some of those new things out, because we get comfortable. We get really comfortable being locked in. And it's the same thing with the field teams, right? When they're doing something the same way, we get comfortable with, okay, they know how to do this well. This is how we can make it work. They're comfortable with this. But sometimes being uncomfortable is what gets us to something better. Sometimes being uncomfortable is what makes it better and makes it safer, right? We really have to take the time to evaluate that, look at that, and take that chance if that's truly what it is, right? But it does take a minute, and it does take time, which we all value. We all only have so much time to listen to podcasts, watch podcasts. We only have so much time to read our inbox, which is always usually full of emails that we barely even get to look at half of them. But these types of things can be revolutionary when it comes to productivity, to return on investment, and most of all, making sure people go home at the end of the day. So we need to think about those things.
Yeah, and just to touch on what you were just explaining, I completely agree. I think that because I've been there too. I was pushing a new tower crane product, and there was what I witnessed was fear, and just not not well, I guess fear and the fear of safety and not feeling safe, and then also just not necessarily wanting to bring something on very quickly, which you should never do. It should be a controlled adaptation. But at the same time, there was a huge fear in, especially in the crane world, maybe a little less fear because you've got people that are already using cranes, they're already comfortable with it, they're used to things like that. But when you bring in something so new and so innovative, I think there is quite a lot of pushback because there's such a big you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with a construction site. You're dealing with a lot of things that can go wrong, even with weather out of your control. And so there is that big emphasis, and what I saw a lot of the times is fear, which is completely reasonable. But that's where the educational part comes in, and that's where you and I and the podcast and different things and come in to just kind of bring everybody together, educate them on what's working, what's not, and then that way you can see for yourself and you can judge for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're not asking anybody to take a leap of faith here. We're asking them to take the time to educate, right? And I completely agree. And that's what we're here to do. And that's why we, invest in awareness. We invest in situational awareness. We invest in the education parts, and we get out in front of everybody as much as we can. So.
Now, I know you brought up the pre-con side. I've been in conversations actually on, I believe it was episode 3, with Chad Jacobs from Stevenson Equipment, who's the tower crane specialist. He was explaining to me that in the crane world, the planning is so crucial to every project for a multitude of reasons, especially ROI. And so, are you guys involved in the pre-con side of things with your product when you get involved, or is it just a matter of getting onto the site and educating the operators and the guys that are, the workers on the site?
Yeah, we aim to be, we want to be, involved in the pre-con. There's a lot of times where clients might see us as a last resort because they haven't worked it into their pre-con, and sometimes that's just simply a communication thing too between the pre-con teams and some of the other project management teams. But that's where we want to be, and I think that's where we're going to live more in the future too, as teams are aware of us. Sometimes, like I said, they don't become aware of us until they need us. Um, that being said, I when it comes to the crane companies, and some of that is even moving into a job site, right? The most expensive part of utilizing a crane is getting it into the site and out of the site, especially if it's a large crane. Um, we get involved when it comes to the planning of the rigging. And so, whether that is urgently or whether that is during the pre-con phase, we are definitely involved in that because we're supporting teams from a standpoint of how do we implement our technology into an existing lift or into a future lift that you're planning out, right? Either way, our model's the same though. We have everything we need to be able to dive right in and quickly evaluate and help guide those teams and how to change or how to build out what they're doing. And that's a valuable piece of what we're trying to do and what we do. It also builds trust and it shows that we're credible, and we're educated, and we have the experience in the industry to do those things too. So.
Okay, great. And are you seeing friction between, operations, engineering, field teams, pre-con? Is there friction there, or are things usually running pretty smoothly?
It depends. Every company has a different atmosphere. Ideally, everybody wants to have that clear, communicative, strong leadership, build
Yeah,
out. But the
yeah.
reality is that there's a number of teams that don't. And if they don't, it's harder for us, especially trying to bring something new. And I think a lot of teams that have trouble communicating and have trouble um, being organized or getting along with their ideas. I think they're the ones that push back on change. I think they're the ones that are reluctant to be innovative, even though they might even have an innovations team that's all they do. They might not even communicate with their innovations team or see eye to eye with them. I've seen that pushback indirectly. It's not something that their overall team, I think, admits is happening. And it ends up usually pushing out these new innovative, good ideas, whether it be process or whether it be equipment. And until that's fixed, in my opinion, until that's fixed, I don't think that they're going to be quickly to embrace anything new. Whether, like I said, it's a policy change or a piece of equipment, they need to fix that rudimentary issue before they can progress towards improvement.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's a stepping stone to more innovation and more improvements. So where can people find your company? Where are you guys from? Give us a little more information on that.
Absolutely. So we're based in Denver, Colorado. We have our manufacturing facility, our corporate headquarters there in Denver. You can find us at vitaindustrial.co. And if you want to learn more about other products like the aerospace side, vitatech.co. So VITATECH.co. And feel free to check out our YouTube pages. We're all over LinkedIn. We have great content everywhere. And feel free to reach out to me directly too. More than happy to take care of anybody's questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll throw all of this information down in the description. I'll work with you on that after this. so that we can get that down there for all of our viewers. So if you guys want to check anything out, you don't have to follow what we're saying here. You can go right to the description and you can click right on the links. Make it nice and easy for you. I'll even add Caleb's LinkedIn if he's comfortable with that, so you can contact him at any point. Um,
Yeah, and just so everybody knows too, should have said this at the beginning, but my nickname in the industry is Rosie. A lot of people know me as Rosie. So if you're like, Caleb, is that Rosie? Yes, it is Rosie. I'm Rosie. Caleb Rosenberger, Rosie.
Okay. I'll even put that in your little description title at the very beginning
Perfect.
so people can see that, because we didn't talk about it now till the end. But yeah, we'll put it in there. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap this thing up?
The only thing I wanted to say, first of all, is thank you for having me on the podcast. I think what you guys are doing is great, and really, really appreciate the opportunity. And then I just want to say, to everybody, especially the youth that are looking to become a part of the trades or get into construction. I mean, this is the place to be. There's so much opportunity, right? And I think just listening to this podcast, you can hear what I did, hear your story and your other podcasts that you talk about. I mean, the fact is that this world is not isolated to one avenue or another avenue. You start out here, you can end up over here, you can go over here. And so check it out, get involved. And if you ever want to reach out direct, I'm more than happy to have a conversation and inspire. So
And Rosie, I'm going to use your nickname here. Rosie, so one of the things that I've seen in every single or heard in every single podcast so far that we've had, I think almost every single one, they've talked about hiring. They've talked about, we're hiring, we need people, come into the industry, come work for us. You can make great money in the industry. There's no secret to that. And one thing for the youth that I would like to add is, if you're watching this, you're not in the industry, whether you're young or old, doesn't matter. One thing that we can probably both agree, and maybe all of the most of the viewers that are in the construction industry, AI is not taking over anytime soon in this industry. So I can firmly tell you that maybe some of the technology companies, maybe some things will be implemented, and they already are. But as far as jobs, that is not happening. Not in this industry anytime soon. Jobs will be there. So if you're worried about AI, come to the construction industry. That is the only thing I can say. It's not going anywhere. Like we talked about, very old school when it comes to a lot of ways. Hiring is one of them. So you have to really, I really want to get that across for the people that are listening and maybe may not be in the industry and sitting there watching all these YouTube videos right now that are just scaring people about AI and that there's going to
yes.
be zero jobs. That's not the case in this industry. So come to the industry.
Well, and to take that one step further, if I may, um, I go back to that line I said about, nobody's paid and hired on to primarily hold a tagline, right? Well, I think what we really got to do is remember that AI is going to make our jobs better. It's going to make it more opportunity for us in this industry, and people aren't going to be able to replace human ability, oversight, operation with AI completely. AI is only going to be a tool that assists us with everything that we're doing. So this is probably one of the most exciting times to get involved, because you might be able to progress or go a different direction within your construction career quicker. Within reason, right? Within learning and being thorough about how you go about it and making sure that you get the experience that you need. But I think that, yeah, we shouldn't be scared by AI is going to take our jobs, because if you really look at how construction works, and whether it be the trade work behind it, whether it be the communication and the organization, the leadership side of it, um, those are all things that humans have to be involved in to make sure they operate effectively. One of the biggest reasons is because it's all about relationships in construction. It's all about
Exactly.
relationships. And if you, AI can't replace relationships. So, so yeah, check it out, get involved.
Yep, you're exactly right. And I completely agree. So once again, that's another episode of Breaking Ground. Caleb, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. We gave a little plug there for the construction industry, tag teamed it there at the end, so I appreciate that as well. But yeah, I guess Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Job site comes with pressure. Deadline stacking, crews moving, jobs depending on you. But behind the scenes, everything slows down. Quotes and bids, calls, service tickets, even admin work stacks up. With high-level talent, you can hire remote staff to fill the traditional office positions at half the cost, so your team can focus on what actually makes money. Scale your operation without scaling your overhead. High-level talent. Visit highleveltalent.com today to learn more.